what can you tell me about the results? How many of you received? How many are still out there? How many are you planning to apply?
I have like 4 or 5 out there. And they're still answering. Carla is also answering one.
Okay.
But she was not sure about the permission from the principal from another teacher to get inside the school to observe another teacher. She wasn't sure about that.
Okay, that's something that you should check directly.
Yes.
Yeah.
For example, Flor, she's been working for 9 years, and she said the same. Well, she implements the task based, she knows what it is, and she agreed and she says to be observed. However, I have to ask for permission to the principal. Sorry. And she has 9 years, and then 7 years. She's a teacher from my school, and she agrees. She has something that I'm looking for with her about the task based, and she accepted to be observed. I asked the principal, and the principal told me it was okay.
So this one knows out. So you have 4 so far that have said yes to.
Yes.
Okay, and you still have 4 more
yes
out there. Are they all from the same school, or are they from different schools?
They are all from different schools.
Okay.
All of them.
Okay. And so, when do you think you'll have the rest of the results from the other questionnaires? Okay. So maybe if you have a chance on Tuesday, maybe come by, or at least if you have doubts. I mean, if it's very clear to you the teachers that you want to choose, that's fine.
1 or 2.
I
was thinking about Gallo, Diego Alberto Gallo. He has 4 years in the NLP program, and he said yes.
Now, the thing that you need to look at when you look at the results of your questionnaire is to try to find 1 or 2 or 3, whatever the participants, find something that is unique, something different or interesting about that context, about that teacher or the group that you want to focus on.
What I like from Gallo is that he presents the information, and at the end, before the students complete the task by delivering the final product, he shows what they are asked to do. And then he told me that their students get together. Sometimes, most of the times, he plays them, but they design what they have to do. For example, he shows, this is what you have to do. This is a poster. Okay. And the small children says, okay, you have to do the drawings, and you write, and I cut, and I paste, and so on.
Estamos hablando de Gallo, Diego. Okay.
From the teacher de mi escuela, ella los guía más, tiene más guidance para con los niños, pero se completa también bien el task.
All right. Let's see what the results are when you get all of the results. Okay. My first initial reaction would be to try to avoid, in this case, sus compañeros que también está tomando el mismo curso que estás tomando con el mismo tutor. En este caso, Gallo.
Why? Okay.
Because he knows your research. He has access to everything that you're researching, and he knows exactly what you're researching. And the idea is to find a more objective external teacher that is not so much in the same, that knows every aspect, or at least has access to every aspect of your research. I'm not saying that you can't use Diego, but let's wait and see first and look at all the results first before we make the decision. Because I would prefer that you choose someone else that's not classmate, or at least not the same tutor as you. And so that would be, so maybe we can have this discussion on Tuesday. Once you have all the results, we can just come by and we can look at it and see kind of which teachers would be the best, the best candidates for your research. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other teachers that were interesting, that was something different or unique about their
Flor,
context?
well, I was thinking about Gallo. Flor, and the teacher from my school.
Okay.
Even comment something, but he's working in Rincon de Rom, so it's kind of complicated.
Okay. And so, what did you like and unique again about these two? What was something different?
Look, the interaction she has toward the students.
Or what did she say there that kind of caught your attention specifically?
She's like a small girl that gets with him, and she
I mean, did she say something? What did she say?
extra. She asked me about my research. Bueno, yo nada más le dije así como, pues se trata de esto. Y me dijo, bueno, porque mis niños, como tienen 9 años, ya sabes de qué se trata el programa STAR. Me dijo, yo trato de que sí cumplan los tasks que les propongo. Dice, nos ponemos todos juntos y como son niños chiquitos los de ella, se pone a modelar lo que tienen que hacer, lo que tienen que hacer. Entonces, por medio del modelaje que ella hace, ya los demás niños van siguiendo, pero así como de, bueno, hizo muchas cosas. Nosotros en nuestros equipos dividimos lo que ella hizo.
Entonces hiciste una entrevista.
Me platicó, yo nomás le dije, o sea, no fue entrevista como tal, no me dijo de qué es.
Ok.
Dije, del task.
Entonces, quiero que, está bien. Es muy importante que cualquier tipo de información que tú recibes, tenemos que hacer así muy sistemático, así muy detallito. Entonces, por ejemplo, si, qué bueno que ella está practicando todo eso, está bien, pero la idea es que estás capturando, en este caso puede ser una grabación o mínimo una reflexión por escrito, ¿sí? Pero la idea es que como no sé si estás obteniendo o teniendo la misma como tipo de conversación a todos, ¿verdad? Pero la idea es eso, si vas a hablar con ella, pues hablas así con todos para complementar la información que tienen aquí. Pero esa es la idea.
Sería como 2 pasos. El primer paso que fue que fue lo que me gustó, de aquí me enfoqué a ella y a Gallo. Entonces, bueno, entonces me sirve y ya una vez que me sirve lo más enfocado sería la interview.
Sí, pero lo que me refiero es, la razón que estamos haciendo es para que tú puedas decir, estoy escogiendo estos maestros para estas razones. Entonces, cuando me dices, nosotros platicamos me dijo porque estoy preguntando, ¿qué te gusta de ¿Por qué estás pensando que ella es un buen candidato para tu estudio? Lo que tú estás diciendo es basado en la conversación, nada lo que está diciendo aquí hasta ahorita. Estaba diciendo de una conversación, no estás diciendo algo lo que ella puso aquí en el cuestionario. Entonces, estoy preguntando tanto porque en tu presentación tienes que decir, yo escogí estos maestros para esta razón, porque ellos contestaron o me dijeron en una entrevista o algo así muy detallito lo que dijo, ¿verdad? Si tú estás hablando también o teniendo una conversación aparte con el cuestionario, la idea es hacer la misma para todos, para que tú puedas tener, sí, que la información lo que necesites, porque si estás hablando mucho, obteniendo mucha información de varias fuentes de uno, pero no de otros, pues tampoco, porque tal vez no, sí, me explico, y no está limitada la información que tienes de otros maestros y no tanto ella, y ahora ya, pues la idea es más o menos hacer la misma para todos y ya, entonces, ahorita la preferencia, si tú puedes capturar información, una razón por escrito, lo que puso aquí mejor, dejando lo que te dijo afuera, simplemente porque no fue una entrevista en el sentido de, pues estaba grabado, ¿sí? Entonces, esa es la idea, tratando de utilizar para decir, yo escogí, ese es un ejemplo, porque tal vez va a cambiar, pero la idea es, a ver, ok, me contestó aquí Y acá, en esta manera, y fue por eso escogí esta. Sí, esa es la idea. Y hacer la misma en cada uno. No escogí este porque contestó así, entonces este no, ¿verdad? Entonces, vamos a esperar, vamos a guardar estos cuestionarios para martes o miércoles, ya cuando tengas todo ya hecho, ya practicamos otra vez para ver con quién. ¿Sí? Y si tú sabes por cuestiones de logística que hay alguien así, está muy afuera, pues
¿No participa?
pues sí, pero no pase tiempo con el cuestionario tampoco, ¿verdad? Todo tiene que ser así factible, entonces no tiene caso pasando a un maestro, a una escuela que sabes, no, es bien lejos, ni puedo ir hasta allá, pues no aplica el cuestionario, ¿sí? No gasta el tiempo en eso. Nada más en la escuela, logística obviamente, y ya desde ahí los detalles basado en cómo está contestando la cuestionario.
Okay.
¿Sí me explico? ¿Sí? Bueno, entonces, so we have our questionnaire. Do you have your other your observation guide that you're doing an interview, right? Later, you'll be doing interviews. Do you have your instruments for those? Uh-huh.
It was the same that I showed you, but
Okay, so if it's the same and if you're clear,
kind of. Todavía no lo modifico. No me había enfocado tanto al instrumento. Pero
Okay.
iba a ser el que nada más le iba a quitar esto. Que nos íbamos a enfocar a tiempo, actividad y descripción de lo que estaban haciendo.
Okay. El interview guide.
No yet.
Okay. Y si practicamos, ¿verdad? ¿Qué consiste del interview guide?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, so the interview guide, the idea with the interview guide is you want to try to prepare for doing a semi-structured interview. So the semi-structured interview is basically where you create more of a you're going to ask questions, but you want to keep it as conversational as possible. So it's not like you're going to 20 questions. Question number 1, check. Question number 2, no tanto así. It's more conversational. And you want the respondent, the teacher, to feel as comfortable as possible as you're questioning. And so what I would suggest doing in your instrument for your interview is first I would have a space where you have your research questions there. So you're constantly, before you begin the interview, you're reminding yourself again what are the research questions, keeping in mind that everything that you do, whether it's a questionnaire, observation, or an interview or whatever, that it's directed to giving you the information to answer your research questions. So always remind yourself again, what are my research questions? What is the focus of my study? From there, you need to have, in your interview guide, maybe you have a few key questions that you want to ask, and those key questions are going to be very much based on what you observed. So your interview probably is going to occur after your observation, after you've gone to the class and you've observed the teacher and the students, and after you observe and you're taking notes in your field notes, when you're using your observation sheet, you're taking notes, you're going to think and reflect on certain things that you want to ask about in the interview that you saw in the class. So think of questions in very broadly as 2 different types. You have some questions that are like general questions about their practice. So you say, how do you teach this? Or do you think task-based learning is important? Okay, how do you teach it? Okay, and they may answer questions, but more broadly. So this is kind of more about their own practice. But in the interview guide, you want to have a second type of question that's really more focused on what happened in the class or the classes that you observed. See the difference? One is questions about what you actually saw versus questions that are what they typically do. So in the interview, you want to focus as much as possible on what you observed, what you saw. And when you observe, you should be thinking a lot about questions about what you see to get more information, because you can only see certain things. When you observe, you don't get the whole picture. It's just what you see. That's only part of it. So when you finish, and what I would recommend doing is each time that you finish an observation is go to your interview guide and look again to see if you need to modify any of your questions that you want to ask. Think about, well, what type of questions do you want to ask? And so that's what I would try to focus on in your research. In your interview guide. And maybe you have 3 or 4 key questions that you want to talk about. And maybe you only list those 3 or 4 key questions in each interview. That would be your guide. And within each one of those key questions, you may be asking more specific questions that relate. Okay, but you don't have to list out every single question. Now, what I also recommend is having a system of trying to remind yourself to ask different types of content questions, like the question words. And what I recommend in the question guide, in the interview guide, is to list out the question words: what, how, where, when, with whom, so on. And leave some space next to each one. List them out vertically. And next to each word, leave space. So when you ask a question, you look down and you just you check off one of the words, the question words that you presented. And you have to listen. You listen to the teacher respond. And when the teacher begins to respond, they're going to respond in a variety of ways. They could answer the what. Hopefully they answer what you asked, so they answer the what. But they might go into more detail, and they start now explaining how they did it. And then maybe they even explain why they did it. So you have to really listen. In a semi-structured interview, it's almost more about listening than it is actually asking the questions. You really have to listen as much as possible. And so when they start explaining the how, you glance down, you just pull a check. Okay, they ask how. Okay. When they finish responding, you glance down and you look at the other question words that still need to be asked. Okay, that you still need to ask, and you ask those questions. So if they haven't answered why yet, then you say, okay, well, why did that happen? Why did you do it that way? Do you always do it that way? And then they give you the response. So the idea here is you're trying to, and you're only talking about that one thing, that one task, that one thing that you noticed in class, but you're asking the what about it, you're asking the how, the why, the when, whom. And it's not necessary to ask all the question words, right, for every point, but you want to ask as many as possible depending on the concept until you really feel that you have good information about that one thing. When you feel that you're finished with that one thing, then you go to the next thing that you want to talk about. And you ask the what or the how or the why, right, depending. And so try to come up with a system for you that works for you, but constantly reminding yourself, am I asking the what, the how, and the why? All related to the research questions. All bringing you back to the main focus and the purpose of your research. Okay, so you come up with a system. Some people write out key questions. Some people just write out key terms, okay, like an outline. You might even do like a key term and then underneath what, where, when, why, how, and the question words under each one, and then kind of check off whatever works for you. But the idea is that you have this next to you. You're having a conversation. You glance down, and it helps you guide you through the questions. Leave space for notes. You don't have to take notes about everything that they say, because you have a recording to do that. Later, you're going to listen to the recording and get exactly what they said. So you don't worry about exactly what they say. But they may say something, and you may think, oh, you know what, I want to ask more about that. So you just jot it down, and they're talking, and you can take notes to remind yourself that later in that same interview to ask a follow-up question about that one thing. That's fine. I would recommend doing that. But come up with a format, and this format is going to be a format that you're going to include in your thesis at the end, in the appendix, or the appendices. You're going to include that at the end. And so right now what I want us to do, like this week and next week, is for you to design an instrument with the understanding that you may need to modify it later after you do the observation. Let's just get kind of more or less the format. We'll have some sample questions that probably you'll ask. But know that after you interview, you need to go back and say, I'm definitely going to ask this and this and this, and change it. Actually modify it. Because when you finish your thesis, whatever you used, that's what you're going to upload into your thesis at the end.
Okay. Should I add a header for the interview guide?
I would, yeah, simple header with just general information about the context, the teacher.
So
whatever.
something like this is the header with name and the stuff, the title of the question, what the question is, and just write down like the WH questions, and as long as I am listening to, having check marks, so that and the possible notes about what I will keep asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then in the header, you just include the independent variables that you think are necessary. Okay, and you might take some of them from the questionnaire that you had. Okay, but it's up to you. Whatever you think is works. But yeah, that's fine.
How the interview about the ones that I am thinking, for example, floor that I liked. Should I create another questionnaire to be interviewed and recorded, or just with this?
Not another questionnaire, but you may have just like the way that I'm thinking here is that you have your questionnaires. From the questionnaires, you choose your participants. When you choose your participants, you're going to call them or talk to them and say, okay, the next 3 weeks, I'd like to do my research with you. Is that okay? Okay, and then this is what I'm planning. And you need to coordinate very carefully with each teacher. This is what I'm planning. Observing these days, maybe an interview at this day. Are you available? And you have to work out all that with the teacher. So once you've done that, so you're going to observe, and then you're probably going to have interviews that come after. Now they may come after all of your observations, or maybe you do an observation, an interview, observation.
And what about the observation that you will have for the students? So
for the classes, you're probably depends on how. I'm sorry.
This is going to be. Is this going to be?
I see.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
Right. So you have your observation sheet that help you for your observations, and then you'll have your interview guide to help you with your interviews.
Sure.
And then you decide the sequence. But I don't think you'll need another questionnaire. You're going to use that questionnaire, and that's going to help you with your interview and the observations, right? But I don't think you need an additional one. And I don't know if it's necessary to have an interview before you observe. I don't think I would. No. You may talk to them, which is not an interview. You may say and schedule how you want to observe. First, but don't ask questions and don't mix the interview and just the logistics of planning. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So be very careful. Like this here, you want to try to avoid that. I mean, if they start talking like this, okay, I'm sorry, can I record what you're going to say? And just record it, right? So that you have the recording so that you can be more systematic and very specific about recalling what they say.
So first, I need to check the availability of the teachers about having another teacher in the classrooms, about the permission to be
exactly there. Make sure you have all the permissions from the schools. You can do that now. Even if it turns out later that you don't observe them, you have the permission. It's better to have the permission and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yes.
So right now you can start on the permissions. If you think there might be a possibility, now's the time to get that permission. Possibly. So go ahead and start on that, and bring me something next week before our interview. I mean, once you have.
I think that from Tuesday you will bring the 10 questionnaires I wrote, and I will already have the permissions, and will show you the interview guide.
Okay. So ideally, by next Friday, you should have enough. You should know your participants. We should have all your instruments, so maybe you can start your data collection 1 week early, like the next week. That would be. If not, it's fine. We still have another week, so don't feel pressured to finish. But if you do finish early, that's going to give us another week for data collection, and we can never have too much time for data collection.
Yeah, as well as have enough time to correct my data view.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's another thing too.
Sure.
Make sure you're working on that. Ask me if you're not sure. If we need to schedule additional time, that's fine. Just contact me. The main thing is not to put it off, to forget about it, to try to finish it up as much as possible now.
I realized that for Tuesday we'll bring as much as possible. So I see you on
Okay.
Tuesday.
Yeah, that's fine.
All
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Hope. Take care. Have a good week.
You will.
All right, bye.